Incredible blood donation, struggling nurse's heartwarming act revealed to save CEO single dad's son. Emily's heart raced in her chest as she glanced at the flyer pinned to the hospital wall. The bold letters screamed, "Blood Drive, be a hero." Beneath it, the smiling faces of donors glowed with the warmth of their selfless acts. She often felt like a superhero in her scrubs, but the weight of student debt and long shifts hung heavy on her shoulders. Yet, for her bright-eyed daughter, Lily, every sacrifice was worth it. In the bustling corridors of the hospital, Emily's empathetic nature shone brightly. She listened to patients' fears, held their hands through unsettling moments, and soothed frayed nerves with comforting words. As she stepped away from her last patient, a little girl with a bandaged arm, the thought of being that ray of hope for others tugged at her heartstrings. It was time for her to be brave, to show Lily the importance of kindness beyond words. With a firm resolve, she signed up to donate blood that afternoon, determined to inspire her daughter with her actions. Giving back, after all, was part of what made this world a better place. Meanwhile, Jack pushed through the revolving doors of the hospital, the usually vibrant atmosphere transformed into a suffocating labyrinth of anxiety. As a CEO, he thrived on control, making decisions by the hour. But nothing prepared him for the phone call that shattered his world. Tyler, his teenage son, had fallen gravely ill, and panic enveloped him like a swarm of bees. He raced down the polished hallways, his meticulously pressed suit now a mere reminder of the life he once knew. The buzzing world around him faded, all he could think about was his son, who had recently retreated into himself after losing his mother. Jack's heart tightened. Did he do enough? As Emily leaned back in the donation chair, her hands began to tremble not from fear but from the profound realization of the lives she could touch. Each drop of her blood carried compassion, a lifeline to someone desperately in need. She closed her eyes, envisioning Lily's bright smile, the very image that drove her to push through long, exhausting days. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Just as Emily's thoughts settled, a doctor swept past her, his urgent stride catching her attention. He brushed against Jack, who had finally arrived, in a flurry of breaths, worry evident in every line of his face. Their eyes met, and an invisible connection sparked in the electric air. In that charged moment, Emily caught a glimpse of the man behind the suit. There was turmoil, grief, and fear writ large across his expression. She sensed his overwhelming urge to protect his son, to find solace amid uncertainty. As more hospital staff rushed by, she felt an instinctive drive to reach out, fearing he was about to crumble under the weight of it all. What would Jack choose? Would he allow himself to embrace the warmth of community and let go of his corporate armor, or would pride keep him shackled? Just as the tension peaked, a distant sound echoed in the hospital, a reminder that life was fragile and fleeting. Would this chance meeting change everything? A moment hung in the air, thick with possibility and unexpected bond, ripe for exploration, yet cloaked in uncertainty. Would they navigate these stormy waters together, or would the winds of despair keep them apart? Tyler. The name hung between them, a whispered plea trapped in time. Jack's mind raced. He barely noticed the world around him, the bustle of nurses, the distant echo of medical equipment, and the soft murmur of anxious families. All that mattered was his son, fighting a battle he couldn't see. Emily watched Jack take a shaky step forward, determination etched into his features. She couldn't help but admire his resilience, the way he was ready to face this moment head-on. But his eyes betrayed him, they flickered with fear. Is he going to be okay? Jack finally asked, his voice cracking like glass. The question came as though it had been building in his chest, poised to burst. Emily felt the gravity of the moment settle over her like a heavy blanket. She wanted to comfort him, to assure him that everything would turn out all right. But the truth was, the reality of the situation was too uncertain for empty promises. Yet, her instincts kicked in. "I don't know," she replied gently, "but we will do everything we can. You aren't alone in this." His stare softened for a brief moment, as if he was grasping for hope amidst despair. Emily took a small step closer. "Have you been screened yet? You could be a match. Every drop counts." Jack's brow furrowed as he absorbed her words. Suddenly, something ignited within him, an ember of purpose. The thought of standing idly by while his son struggled brought a deep sense of anger and helplessness, emotions he could no longer afford. For too long, he had buried himself in work, thinking it was the best way to provide. But now he saw, it was time to fight in a different way. He inhaled sharply and nodded, determination settling over him. "I'm ready." As they began to walk toward the blood donation area, something stirred in Emily's chest too. It was more than just the act of giving blood, it was the realization that they were both willing to step out of their comfort zones for those they loved. In her heart, she felt a flicker of hope, a connection forming not just between herself and Jack, but for their children as well. The two of them settled into adjacent chairs, the sharp sting of needles becoming a shared experience. Jack glanced over at Emily, surprised to find her giving him an encouraging smile. There was strength in vulnerability after all. "Why did you choose to donate?" he asked, and for a moment, the fear that had engulfed them dissipated in the sheer power of human connection. Emily thought for a moment, reminiscing about the values instilled in her by her own parents. "Because it's not just about blood. It's about life. And when you're a parent," she paused, swallowing the lump in her throat, "you realize you'd do anything to save your child." Jack absorbed her words, feeling them resonate within him. As the donation process continued, he felt a warmth spreading through him, mingled with trepidation. They might be strangers now, but in this moment, they were allies, united by love and loss. But just as hope began to blossom, a sudden commotion erupted in the waiting area. Startled, Emily and Jack exchanged worried glances. A family nearby was breaking down, the anguish palpable in the air. Jack's heart raced again, this time not just for Tyler but in confusion about how much they could really help in a world filled with pain. What if helping isn't enough? Jack murmured, his voice filled with doubt. Emily turned to him, fierce determination in her eyes. "Sometimes, just being there is enough. We can't always fix things, but we can stand together." As they sat in silence, shadows of their personal struggles loomed ever larger. The fight was far from over, and the stakes felt too high. Would their journey to help each other and their children bring healing, or deepen their despair? Would wonder arise from their awakening friendship, or would it be lost amid the hospital's turmoil? In that moment of uncertainty, as the first signs of hope blossomed, one question lingered heavily in the air: what would happen when they had to face the truth? Jack's heart pounded as he tried to make sense of everything. He glanced at Emily, her eyes reflecting a mixture of hope and anxiety. The urgency in the hospital was unyielding, but in that small corner where they sat, a fragile bond was forming, one that might just hold them both steady. After what felt like an eternity, a nurse approached them with a clipboard. "We're ready for you, Mr. Turner," she said kindly, gesturing for Jack to follow her. Jack stood, but his feet felt heavy, like lead. He turned back to Emily, unsure of what to say. "Stay close," she said softly, her grip on his arm reassuring. It was a simple statement, but it wrapped around him like a warm blanket in the cold sterility of the hospital. Together, they walked to the donation area, the hum of fluorescent lights above comforting in a strange way. As Jack settled into the chair, he felt the momentum of the moment build. The nurse prepped his arm, and he watched the way her hands moved so expertly. In that instant, he understood something profound. He was just one man in this vast ocean of suffering, but together, they could be part of something bigger. "You give hope," he murmured to the nurse, surprising himself with the words. She looked up, surprised yet gratified. You really do. With a faint smile, she finished her task and stepped back. Jack's mind buzzed with thoughts of Tyler, fighting for breath, fighting for life. This was the first tangible step he could take, a leap into the unknown, and he was terrified of what lay ahead. After a few minutes, Emily joined him again, her eyes bright. How did it go? She asked, the tension easing from her voice. Everything feels okay. Yeah, just waiting for results now, Jack replied, still holding on to that flicker of hope. But as soon as he said it, doubt crept in. What if he wasn't a match? What if he couldn't save his son with just this act of kindness? You're doing more than you realize, Emily said, sensing his turmoil. This is a step. No matter the outcome, Tyler knows you're fighting for him. Jack let her words sink in, allowing the warmth of her support to wash over him. But just then, the nurse returned, her expression more serious than before. Jack's heart dropped as he braced himself for what she might say. Mr. Turner, we have your results from the initial screening, she said, her voice calm but laced with urgency. You're a potential match. The air felt electric. He could almost hear the beating hearts of everyone around him. Joy surged through him, but it was mixed with the heavy knowledge that potential didn't guarantee anything. What's next? He asked. The nurse explained additional testing was needed, but as she spoke, all Jack could think about was Tyler. Coupled with the hope was a strong desire to protect. He needed to be strong for his boy. I know this is overwhelming, Emily interjected, her eyes steady on his, but you're doing something incredible. You've just brought light into darkness. Jack took a deep breath, trying to stabilize the whirlpool of emotions inside him. He wasn't just a father in distress anymore, he was a man who had decided to act. But before he could articulate his gratitude, another crash echoed from the waiting area. They both turned, flashes of fear racing through them. A doctor was trying to calm a man who seemed to be on the brink, his voice rising in desperation. Jack could see at the faces around him, cracks of pain, uncertainty writ large. Jack squeezed Emily's hand as he turned back to her, suddenly realizing. What happens to all of us if hope is ripped away? She placed her other hand over his, her gaze fierce. Then we fight harder. We lean on each other. Just then, the door swung open again, and a voice he recognized called out, a voice that sent tremors of worry through him. Tyler's name was being called, but not in the way he hoped. What if this moment jeopardized everything they had just started to build? The question echoed in Jack's mind as he squeezed Emily's hands tighter. What now? How would they continue this fight together? Jack's breath hitched in his throat as the urgency in the waiting area clawed at him. The voice calling Tyler's name rang like a bell, shattering the moment they had just begun to forge. Anxiety danced in his chest as he searched for Emily's eyes, grounding himself in her unwavering gaze. Stay here, he whispered, though it felt more like a plea than an order. He stepped toward the door, propelled by a force he couldn't quite understand. With each step, he could feel the eyes of strangers pinning him down, their silent questions echoing in his mind. The nurse who had originally taken him to the donation area waved him over to a small gathering in the corner. They were huddled together, frantic whispers filling the air. The sight tightened the knot in his stomach. He approached, heart racing, and was met with the anxious faces of doctors and nurses. Mr. Turner. A doctor called, relief washing over his features. Jack's stomach churned. He couldn't tell if the doctor's expression was good or bad. Thank you for coming. We need your consent immediately. Consent for what? Jack's voice was hoarse, grappling for clarity. We've just received your results, and it looks like Tyler may need immediate intervention, the doctor explained, as urgency sharpened his words. We're hoping you can help. The sheer weight of those words crashed over Jack like a tidal wave, nudging him closer to the edge of panic. Help how? Your potential match means we could move the process forward quickly, the doctor confirmed, his voice steady. If you're up for it, we can begin preparations immediately. Jack stood there, inhaling the air thick with fear and desperation. He nodded, albeit hesitantly. He felt a familiar surge of hope, but it soon collided with nagging dread. This could be it finally being able to give something to his son. But what if it wasn't he enough? What if he lost Tyler in the process? Jack, Emily's voice broke through the haze, filled with strength and support. She closed the distance between them, her hand finding his again. You have to do this. You're the best chance he has. He searched her eyes, looking for any flicker of doubt, but found only certainty. The weight of her belief bolstered him. They both knew it was a leap of faith, but what other choice did he have? Let us do it, he said, the words tumbling out with newfound determination. Almost immediately, the staff began moving with purpose, surrounding him with a whirlwind of activity. The quickening pace and flurry of movements lit a fire beneath him. The world blurred, and all he could focus on was the thought of his son, the face of Tyler, filled with joy and laughter, and the hope that still flickered, bright and alive. As they prepared him, Jack felt a slight squeeze of Emily's hand, and he leaned closer, whispering, if anything happens, promise me you'll keep fighting for him. Her eyes widened, filled with understanding. Together, we'll keep fighting. No matter what. And then, everything sharpened. Jack found himself lying back in a hospital bed, a nurse smiling down at him, her eyes full of warmth. The world spun gently as they prepped him for the process, but his mind was anchored. Thoughts of Tyler fueled his determination. Yet even as he focused on this moment of giving, a shadow hovered at the edges of his mind. What if the tide turned against them? Would this all be in vain? An icy grip clutched at his heart, but he pushed it aside. He was fighting not just for Tyler, but for their family, for hope, and for a future he couldn't bear to imagine without his son. Just as the nurse started the procedure, a loud commotion erupted outside the room. The sound of a crashing voice sent icy chills down Jack's spine. Someone was in distress, and for a moment, he caught Emily's worried glance. Stay here. He blurted, heart racing once more. But as he did, a sudden thought struck him. What if this moment changed everything? Before Jack could process it, the door flung open, and another doctor rushed in, panic etched across her face. We have a situation. We need additional help. Immediately. The air crackled with dread as questions surged in Jack's heart once again. What lay ahead? What did this mean for Tyler? Would they be able to navigate the storm that seemed to follow them like a shadow? Jack locked eyes with Emily, both of them holding on tight to the hope that fluttered between them. What fate awaited them? Would they be able to fight through the chaos together? Jack's heart thundered in his chest, the panic in the room thickening the air around him. The doctor's urgent gaze felt like a spotlight shining on all of his fears. What kind of help? Jack demanded, his voice rising slightly. We can't wait any longer, the doctor said, urgency reeking from her words. Tyler has gone into distress. He is not responding to the treatment as we hoped. We need to start a blood transfusion right away, and we need your sample before we can proceed. The world tilted as those words sank in. Tyler needed him. His blood, his very essence, could be the key to saving his son. Yet, anxiety curled tight in his gut, a dark shadow whispering doubts. What if he wasn't a match? What if this didn't work? Let us do it. He exclaimed, finding a flicker of determination in the chaos. Emily squeezed his hand tighter, anchoring him to the moment. The nurse quickly finished drawing his blood, her hands steady despite the mounting pressure. Each second felt like an eternity as she worked, and Jack's thoughts raced. He envisioned Tyler's smile, the crinkle of laughter in his eyes, the way his small hand would reach for his as they walked down the street. The image spurred him on, fueled his resolve. If this was what it took, then he would do it. As the nurse prepared to take his blood sample, the urgency in the room heightened. Jack could hear the distant echoes of alarms and hurried footsteps outside the door. A heaviness settled in, families elsewhere were facing their own battles, just like him. "Jack, just breathe," Emily said softly, her voice calming amidst the storm. "You're doing everything you can. We're in this together." His eyes flickered back to hers, and he felt that familiar warmth spread through him like a bomb. She was right. He had to trust the doctors, trust himself. There was a chance, however small, and that was worth fighting for. As the nurse secured the supplies she needed, another doctor entered, making the room feel even tighter. "We're ready, Jack. We're going to run the test now. I'll be right here with you." The confidence in her tone did nothing to alleviate the knot of fear wrapped around his heart. Jack glanced outside the room, where the turmoil continued. He could sense the weight of worry and despair pressing down on him. But in that moment, as he took a deep breath, he finally realized the truth: his love for Tyler transcended everything. It was a force that pushed him to face the unknown, a fire that refused to be extinguished. Suddenly, there was a crash from down the hall, and then a scream, a desperate cry that sent chills racing down his spine. Jack bolted upright, dread pooling in his stomach. Someone was in distress. His heart raced faster, matching the frantic pace of the chaos outside. "What's happening?" he asked urgently, looking between the doctors and the nurse. The doctor exchanged worried glances with the others. "We'll get through this. Stay focused on Tyler. He needs you," she urged. Everything blurred for Jack. Focus? How could he when that cry still echoed, piercing through the haze of fear surrounding him? Just then, another nurse rushed past, eyes wide with alarm, trailing a flurry of urgency. Jack's heart sank. Was this about his son? "Emily," he whispered, his voice lacking the strength he desperately wished to project. "I'm here, Jack," she soothed, her fingers tightening around his. "Don't lose sight of what matters. We're right here. Focus on Tyler." But how could he focus when the world was crumbling around him? Flickering lights, distant voices, cries for help, everything spiraled into a frantic montage, squeezing his heart. And then they brought in another gurney, wheels squeaking harshly, a new patient lying unconscious. Jack's breath caught in his throat. He recognized the familiar face. The blood drained from his face. The world felt like it was closing in. "Is that?" His voice trailed off, horror creeping in. Questions swirled in his mind. What if this was a sign? What if Jack? Emily's voice broke through the cacophony, grounding him once more. "Stay with me. Whatever happens, we will face it together." But as Jack watched the frantic efforts of the nurses and doctors, he couldn't help but wonder, what would this mean for Tyler? What new challenges would they have to fight through this time? In that harrowing moment, surrounded by urgent whispers and flashing lights, he couldn't shake the feeling that the tides had shifted once more. Would they be ready for what was to come? Jack's heart felt like it was in a vice. He couldn't shake the sight of that familiar face, one he had just seen smiling only a few days ago. The chaos of the room swirled around him, cries echoing in his ears, and fear gripped him tight. A mix of panic and confusion washed over him as he struggled to grasp the situation unfolding before him. "Get out of the way!" someone shouted. Nurses pushed past Jack and Emily, rushing toward the new patient. That face, it belonged to Mark, the CEO of the company Jack worked for. He had always seemed so invincible, always so in control. But now, with him lying unconscious, the reality hit hard. No one was immune to tragedy. Jack's mind raced. What could have happened to him? Had there been an accident? What was it doing here, in this place of heartache? For a fleeting moment, he felt a flicker of guilt. It should be Tyler on that gurney, he thought bitterly. The heaviness of his son's condition felt like a dark cloud over his heart. "Jack!" Emily's sharp tone pulled him back. "Stay with me, please." He turned to her, desperation flooding his senses. What does this mean for Tyler? What if this delays his treatment? She held his gaze, her eyes burning with resolve. We have to believe that everyone will get the help they need. You can't lose hope now. Those words, hope, struck a note in him. He felt anger welling up, not at her, but at the entire situation. Why did life have to impose these challenges? How could it be so relentless? A doctor burst into the room, barking commands. We need to stabilize Mark. Start the 4 fluids. Get a crash cart ready. The urgency in her voice only heightened Jack's anxiety. It seemed that chaos was the theme of the hour. The sound of beeping monitors rose to a frantic tempo. Jack half listened, half dwelling on what he could lose. His son felt like a tender flame fluttering in the wind. He clutched Emily's hand tighter, grounding himself against the storm. Jack fought against the spiraling panic. Emily, what if I'm not a match? The question hung heavy, drenched in dread. We can't think like that, she said fiercely. You have to believe. We have to believe. In that moment, the door swung open again. Another nurse rushed in with an alarming report, but her face shifted suddenly as she caught sight of Mark. Words tumbled from her lips, fast and urgent. We've got a code. Get the paddles. Jack flinched. The word code felt like ice water drenching his spirit. The room was tense, thick with fear and desperation. He felt the walls closing in again. His breaths turned shallow. Calm down, Jack, Emily coaxed, sensing his struggle. Remember, hope will guide us through this. But as he opened his mouth to reply, a sudden commotion drew his attention back to the gurney. Nurses were moving swiftly, their voices a blend of commands and urgency. Jack's breath caught again as the world around them seemed to slow. What if this was already becoming too much? His heart ached for Tyler even as he grappled with the reality of Mark's condition. It felt like a surreal nightmare, every second dragging on like a tension-filled eternity. With every sound around him a beep, a shout, the rushed footsteps, Jack felt his resolve weakening. And then, between the flurry of activity, a moment of stillness fell upon the room. A chilling silence blanketed everything as the defibrillator's pads were placed against Mark's chest. Clear. A voice called out. Jack's body tensed. He struggled to understand how one life could be on the line while his son's fate hung in the air. This was more than he could bear. Would they both make it through the night? Stay with me, Jack. Emily's voice pierced through again. Look at me, focus on Tyler. We will make it through this. But before he could process her words, the shocking jolt went through Mark. The monitor blared a frantic note, and Jack's heart raced with it. His thoughts spiraled back to his son, the desperate fight ahead of him. Would Tyler have the strength to pull through as well? In that fragile moment, Jack felt the stakes rise higher than ever. As the chaos continued, he wondered what would happen if both lives hinged on the outcome, and time was no longer on their side. Mark's in V-fib. A voice shouted, cutting through Jack's spiraling thoughts like a knife. Jack's world narrowed. It felt as if everything around him faded away, leaving only the desperate urgency to grasp onto some semblance of hope. Get ready to shock again. Commanded the doctor, the authority in her voice shaking Jack from his stunned silence. He saw Emily's face reflect a mix of determination and fear. They both stood rooted, helpless yet desperately trying to process the turmoil unfolding before them. Jack, Emily breathed, squeezing his hand tighter. We need to stay focused. This is not over yet. Jack wanted to shake his head, to rebuff the hope swirling around like dust in the air. It felt cruel to think of hope when the reality loomed so large. Mark's chest heaved as the medical staff shouted commands, each pulse of the monitor sinking to the frantic beating of Jack's heart. How could any of this be fair? Mark had his own family, people who depended on him. But Tyler was a different matter entirely. A nurse zoomed past them, her expression unwavering. We're doing everything we can. She called back, her voice neutral yet tinged with exhaustion. But Jack barely registered her words, all his thoughts honed in on Tyler, his son's face swimming in front of him. His precious boy. He couldn't even bear to think of a world without Tyler in it. Suddenly, the defibrillator jolted again. Clear. The sharp command pulled Jack's focus back. There was a distinctive crackle in the air, a moment of electrical tension. Jack's breath hitched as Mark's body responded, a convulsion that sent a ripple through the room. The monitor flatlined again, silence enveloped everything. It felt wrong, too wrong. As the tension seeped in, Jack's mind couldn't help but race forward into the unthinkable. What if they couldn't save him? Emily, he whispered, his voice shaky. What if they don't get him back? Sure, we can't think like that. She was a beacon amidst the storm, an anchor in rough waters. Her gaze held a conviction that somehow made it easier to breathe. We need to trust them. We have to believe. Jack found himself pondering what believing really meant. With every passing second, the world around them felt increasingly surreal. Doctors and nurses rushed by, pushing carts and pulling stretchers, while above it all hung the weight of their uncertainty. He forced his mind back to Tyler. Somewhere, a tiny spark of hope was still worth holding on to. Jack. Emily's voice rose above the chaos. Do you want to go to the waiting room? It might be better to, but before she could finish, another electric shock surged through the room. A nurse was calling for an ambulance. Mark needed to be transferred to the ICU. The gravity of the night only deepened. More voices joined, murmuring worriedly in the corner. No, Jack said, shaking his head. I can't leave. I need to be here for him. The stubborn resolve wrapped around his heart like a vine. If there was even the tiniest glimmer of chance for Mark, it meant hope for everyone else too. Time stretched and shrank. Each ring of the phone, each shout from a nurse created a rhythm of a heartbeat that echoed Jack's wild pulse. But just as he felt time slipping further away, a loud cheer erupted. Yes. We've got a rhythm. Jack felt as if an unseen weight lifted, if only for a moment. He exchanged a glance with Emily, it was brief but charged with electricity. Could this be it? But then another awful thought crept in. Mark, the consummate professional, had always managed to shield Jack from the harshest realities of life. He had been a mentor, someone who seemed to have all the answers. Would he ever get to share those moments again? Stay with me, Mark, Jack whispered, unsure if anyone around could hear the quiet plea from his heart. We all need you. The worry for Tyler raced back in, a stark reminder that the stakes were even higher. As the commotion continued, Jack suddenly sensed Emily's grip loosen slightly. She turned toward the hallway, her brow furrowed again. Jack, I think I heard something about a donor. His heart constricted. A donor? Someone is offering, she hesitated, the weight of hope and apprehension colliding in the air, to give blood for Tyler. The unfolding story loomed above them, tying them into a fate that felt impossibly intertwined. The night had to hold promise. Jack's breath quickened. What if this single decision changed everything? The weight of possibility loomed large, and he felt a fresh surge of determination ignite in his chest. But then came the standoff of uncertainty. Would it be enough in time? What if, in their darkest moment, a glimmer of hope turned into a light bright enough to change their lives forever? Jack's mind spun. The flicker of hope in Emily's eyes ignited something deep inside him. They could save Tyler. An answer was within their grasp, but time was the relentless enemy. Where is the donor? Jack asked, urgency threading his voice. I don't know, Emily replied, her brow creased. But we should find out. Just then, a nurse burst into the room, urgency etched in her features. We have blood. We're prepping it now, she called, her tone a mixture of relief and determination. Jack felt a rush of adrenaline surge through him. This was it, this was the lifeline they needed. Emily took a breath, her expression shifting from anxious to hopeful. Jack, this could turn everything around. If they get Tyler stabilized, her voice trailed off, the hope hanging in the air like a fragile glass ball waiting to be dropped. Let us just focus on one thing at a time, he said, trying to ground them amidst the shooting worries. Finding out if it's all going to work. They moved, instinctively, toward the nurse. As Jack approached, he saw a flurry of activity behind her, the medical staff preparing for the blood transfusion. He marveled at how quickly they moved. Suddenly, the chaos around him settled into focus. "Is Tyler awake?" he asked. The question choked him, desperate to hear something good. The nurse caught the edge of his concern. "Not yet, but he is stable. The blood should help him." "Help him how?" Jack pressed, gripping the counter as if it were a lifeline. "His body needs it to recover from the trauma. It's going to help boost his strength," she explained, her voice calm. "Then let us do it," Jack replied, gaining confidence with every word. His resolve rooted deeper with each pulse of his heart. They had a chance, and he would do anything to seize it. As the minutes passed painfully slow, he kept glancing back at Emily. She was whispering encouragement under her breath, hoping against hope. "Jack," she said, her voice breaking the stillness, "I can't help but think about what this means for Mark too. If Tyler gets better, Mark's family." He winced at the reminder of Mark's fate, the uncertainty looming like a shadow over his spirit. "We need to keep them both alive." Jack's heart ached at the thought of Tyler waking up only to face a world without Mark. "Did you hear that?" Emily's eyes widened suddenly, directing his attention to the nurses gathered around Mark. "What is happening?" Jack strained to see through the openings, the anxious energy radiating from his center. The atmosphere shifted as educators buzzed with urgency at the bedside. Their hands seemed to fly, moving with an expertise honed through countless rounds of life and death struggles. "Stay with us, Mark," one of the nurses shouted, bringing Jack's focus back to the man who taught him so much. Jack's hope twisted again like a wire, a mixture of fear and longing. But then came a familiar voice, calm and measured, slicing through the tension. "Mark's awake," the doctor declared. Relief washed over Jack like a warm tide. Hope flickered back. "Can he?" Jack dared to ask, but the doctor was already moving towards him, urgency in her stride. "It's too early to say. We're monitoring his vitals closely." In that moment, the clock seemed to stop, Jack's mind awash with questions. Could Mark, his mentor, his friend, pull through? And what about Tyler? Would the blood donation come in time to heal him too? "Jack, look." Emily pointed, and he followed her gaze. A tiny figure darted past the blood donor, a young woman who had been pacing the waiting room, determined, shadowing her every step. "I'm here to help," she called, her breathless enthusiasm filling the void. Jack felt something stir within, an impulse whispering that this wasn't just a chance for saving Tyler, but perhaps for healing every broken part of their lives. But would everyone truly pull through, or would this night expose more heartache than hope? As Jack stood, tethered by uncertainty and faith, the question loomed large: what next choice would lead them to salvation or tragedy? Jack's heart raced as he watched the young donor approach. She was small, her frame almost lost beneath the bulk of a hospital gown, but her determination radiated from her. Just yards away, a storm of activity surrounded Tyler's room, but in this moment, everything else faded from Jack's mind. "Are you sure you want to do this?" he asked her, his voice carrying more weight than he intended. "Yes," she exclaimed, her eyes bright with conviction. "I can't sit by while someone else suffers. I want to help." Jack felt a swell of gratitude mixed with responsibility. This girl was offering a piece of herself, a gift of life, and he didn't know how to express the depth of that moment. Inside him, hope flickered like a candle lit against a windstorm. The air felt charged, heavy with expectation. Before he could say more, chaos erupted near Mark's room. Nurses called for backup, and the doctor's voice rang like a bell. "Get me the crash cart. Now." Jack swallowed hard, panic clawing at him. The news of Mark's awakening had revived an ember of hope, but now it threatened to turn into ash. "What is happening?" he anxiously asked the young donor. "They're just doing their job," she assured him, though her own eyes mirrored uncertainty. "He just woke up." "It could just be a reaction," Jack nodded, wanting to believe her reasoning. It felt cruel to be torn between two lives fighting for survival. Each moment expanded into eternity, and he couldn't shake the weight of their collective fate. As they waited, Emily stepped closer, her hand resting on Jack's shoulder. "Mark has always been a fighter. If anyone can pull through, it's him." Her faith coursed through him, infusing his hope with a steadiness he grasped tightly. He knew they were all interconnected like threads woven into a fragile tapestry. Each thread had a purpose, and if one frayed, the whole could unravel. There was a pause, a stillness that clung to the air like fog. Suddenly, a shout broke the moment. "Clear!" The familiar sound of defibrillators echoed, sending shockwaves of dread through Jack. He turned sharply toward the nurses as they focused on Mark. The tension was unbearable. A deep breath caught in his throat, it felt as if the world around him held its breath too. "Come on, Mark," Jack whispered, his heart hammering in his chest. "You can do this." Time twisted and spiraled as the seconds felt like hours. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, an answer emerged from the whirlwind. The door creaked open, and the doctor stepped out, her face grave yet resolute. "How is he?" Jack's voice cracked as he asked, feeling Emily grip his arm tighter. "Mark is stable for now, but we need to keep monitoring him closely," the doctor replied, the urgency in her eyes undeniable. "Stable is good, right?" Jack sought reassurance, desperately needing any shred of it. "It's a start," she allowed, but Jack noticed the hint of uncertainty behind her professional mask. He felt like his heart was being squeezed, yet he dared to look at the young donor. "Let's get Tyler that blood donation. We need everything to line up perfectly." With steely determination shining bright in her gaze, she nodded. "I'm ready." As they made their way back to Tyler's room, Jack's mind raced with countless fears and hopes. Would that blood really be enough? Could it change everything? In the hallway, he could hear the low hum of conversations, muted by the walls of desperation surrounding them. He moved closer to the young donor, curiosity bloomed in his mind. "What's your name?" "Liz," she replied, her voice steady. "And I'm not doing this just for Tyler. I had a brother who needed blood once. He didn't make it." The sadness in her eyes cut deep. "I'm sorry," Jack managed, his heart twisting. "It's okay," she said, a flicker of resolve in her voice. "I can save someone else this time, and I'm going to." Together, they pushed the doors open, and the stark brightness inside feel like a spotlight shining down on their hopes. As they approached, the blood transfusion was already in motion, bustling activity surrounding Tyler's bed. Jack barely breathed, a mix of dread and anticipation spiraling in his gut. "Please let this work," he whispered under his breath, as if the universe could hear his plea. But just then, they met with a shocking twist. The monitor beside Tyler began to beep erratically, and a collective gasp filled the room. "Get the doctor!" someone shouted, the world slipping into chaos once more. Jack clenched his fists, struggling against the rising wave of despair. Did they just lose their chance? As moments blurred together in noise and action, he felt a fight somewhere deep within him ignite. Would Tyler's life be claimed before it even had a chance to begin again? With uncertainty hanging over them like a storm cloud, he could only wonder what would happen in the next heartbeat. Jack's heart raced as the doctors rushed around Tyler's bed. He could hardly comprehend the chaos unfolding before him. The frantic beeping of machines filled the air, drowning out all other sounds. It felt as if everything was closing in on him, suffocating his hope just as quickly as it had bloomed. "Stay focused," Emily whispered, her voice steady yet laced with tension. Jack squeezed her hand, clinging to the shaft of strength she exuded. Together, they navigated through the whirlwind surrounding them, his heart, a drum thumping wildly against his chest, urging him to keep fighting. The doctors were shouting orders. Increase the fluids. We need to stabilize him. Jack felt the edges of his vision blur. He knew he needed to be strong, for Tyler, for Emily, for the lives intertwined in this heart-wrenching battle. As the nurses continued to work, Liz stepped beside Jack, her eyes wide with concern. "What is happening?" she asked, her voice trembling. "They're trying to save him," Jack replied, though his voice barely held hope. He wanted to believe in the power of this moment, that every drop of blood might tether them closer to a miracle. "He just has to pull through." Tyler's monitor began to beep in a rhythmic pattern, but it didn't feel right. The urgency built, the tension of too many lives hanging on a precipice. Would they be left hanging in despair, waiting for a day that might never come? A soft sob echoed nearby. Jack turned to see a mother clutching her child. Everyone was fighting their own battles in one overwhelming storm. Suddenly, the doctor turned toward the small assembly, her voice clear and calm amid the chaos. "We need another donor for a more immediate response. Can anyone step forward?" The world fell silent for a moment, as if the air itself held its breath, waiting. Jack's heart raced, a jolt of fear coursing through him. He remembered Liz's story, how she had fought through grief before. Would the blood transfusion come in time? "I'll do it," Liz shouted, stepping forward. "I'm O negative. I can help." Jack grabbed her arm. "Wait, are you sure? You're already stepping in for Tyler." "What if no? This is my chance," she insisted, her voice steady. "If I can be part of something bigger, I will. Tyler needs us." Jack's heart swelled with admiration. Here was a young woman, a hero in her own right, risking everything to save a life she had never known. "Okay," he agreed, releasing her, recognizing the fire in her determination. As medical staff rushed Liz away, he turned to Emily. "This is it. We just need to keep believing." Emily smiled, though her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "That's all we can do, Jack. Hope lights the way, no matter how dark it feels." Minutes felt like hours as they waited. Jack clung tightly to Emily's hand, hearts beating in unison against the churning uncertainty. Time crawled forward, teetering between hope and despair, but Jack refused to look away from the flickering, fragile light of possibility. Finally, a nurse emerged from the treatment room, her face lighting up. "He is stable. The new blood worked." A collective sigh of relief swept through the room. Jack's knees weakened, and he leaned against Emily. She wrapped her arms around him, grounding him in the celebration of life, a moment they had desperately fought for. "Yay!" Liz exclaimed, her joy lighting up the bleak hospital hallway. "Tyler's going to be okay." "Thank you," Jack whispered to Liz, his heart full. "You fought for him. And you still need to fight for Mark." "We all do," Liz reminded him gently. Jack nodded. The gravity of Mark's situation was not lost on him. He had a mentor's life hanging in the balance, a thread pulled taut. "Let us ensure both of them get through this," he said, determination filling his gaze. Grateful for the pivotal turns in their lives, they turned together, heads held high and hearts intertwined. Moving towards Mark's room, Jack was reminded of how kindness and compassion united them, making them stronger than they had ever imagined. As they stepped into Mark's room, he recalled the weight of all they had endured. A connected web of struggle and triumph. And in that moment, he realized this journey was far from over, but each heartbeat reminded him that there was a flicker of hope, a chance for connection, for healing, and for rising together from the darkness. Would they all emerge stronger? Would they find solace in shared stories and healing? Watching the light return to Tyler's eyes and Mark's steadfast spirit, Jack knew they had weathered the storm together, reminding themselves with each day that in the midst of chaos, love always found a way. Together, they turned towards a brighter future on the horizon, holding each other tightly as life's new chapters beckon them forward in unity and hope. Don't wait another second. You need to subscribe now to witness the journey of transformation that unfolds in our stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Comment below your thoughts and feelings about this inspiring conclusion. Share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see how hope and humanity shine bright in moments of darkness. This is the moment to take action. Don't let it slip away.